Tucked away in the English countryside, Sulgrave Manor is more than a historic house. It's the ancestral home of one of the most recognizable families in American history. Long before the founding of the United States, before Revolution or independence, the Washington family lived here in rural England. Their story, rooted in the small Northamptonshire village, would eventually stretch across the Atlantic and become part of America's national identity. Today, Sulgrave Manor stands as a symbol of the shared history between the United Kingdom and the United States, a reminder that America's story began long before 1776. Sulgrave Manor preserves the story of the Washington family and their English roots. To learn more, I spoke with Sulgrave Manor's senior guide, Thea Young. To start, she told me about the history of how the Washington family came to live at the manor, how they ended up in America, and how they're related to George Washington.
Well, it was built by a chap called Lawrence Washington. Now, he turned out to be the 5 times great-grandfather of George Washington. Now, Lawrence was a wool trader. He had made money in the town of Northampton in the early part of the 16th century. And he was mayor of Northampton, so he was successful. But he was able to acquire the land here in Sulgrave, the manor of Sulgrave. It came on the market to be sold because it had been owned by a priory, St Andrews in Northampton, and under Henry VIII this priory was dissolved, and so the land came on the market. And Lawrence was able to purchase the manor for £324, 14 shillings and 10pence. So Lawrence and his second wife Amy lived here with their 11 children, and Amy died sadly in 1564, but Lawrence continued living here until 1580s. So he survived his wife about 20 years. Then his oldest son Robert inherited. But then Robert sold the manor to a nephew. The nephew's son then sold the manor out of Washington family hands late 1650s. So in total, the Washingtons were only here for just over 100 years. Now, in 1656, Lawrence's great-great-grandson, John Washington, went to Virginia. He went to trade. He didn't mean to stay. But as things worked out for him, he did stay. And John became successful. He acquired land. He became a member of the House of Burgesses. He was high up in his church there. And then into the 18th century, John's great-grandson was born, and that was George Washington, and of course the rest is history.
Saved and restored in the early 20th century by transatlantic donors and the Anglo-American Peace Committee, the manor became an important place of remembrance, linking 2 nations through one family's history. Though Sulgrave Manor tells a story of the Washington family's English origins, it also reflects the global legacy of George Washington himself. While the Washingtons of Sulgrave and Washington the President are separated by centuries, the house still offers a remarkably personal connection to one of America's most enduring figures.
Well, we have the George Washington exhibition in another part of the site. It's a lovely exhibition. We've had it now for about 4 or 5 years. But this year, to celebrate America250, we're having a refresh of the exhibition, and more items from our archives being brought out to describe George Washington and the American War of Independence. We are lucky enough to have a coat that was worn by George Washington. It's had some restoration, and it's featuring in some research that's being done. One of the pieces that I particularly like is George Washington's personal seal. It's very small, it's quite lovely, but the actual seal shows the Washington coat of arms. And we can see the Washington coat of arms in the shields here in the windows.
For many visitors, Sulgrave offers something unique, a chance to see American history not only through the lens of revolution and independence, but through shared heritage. I asked Thea what she thinks a visit to Sulgrave means to both American and British visitors.
Well, of course, for our American visitors, it brings their history alive, going back to earlier times and seeing where their first president descended from, and the story of fairly ordinary sort of beginnings, yes, wealthy, but not aristocratic. For our British visitors, George Washington is interesting. Most people have heard of George Washington. They know he was the first president, but perhaps their knowledge is somewhat limited because it's not taught so much in our schools, except until students get to maybe the age of 16. So they learn something. They learn something about the first president, about the man, and what made the man, which is important to them. People feel the importance there, and that's a nice thing for people to take away with them.
As the United States approaches its 250th anniversary, places like Sulgrave Manor invite reflection on the deep historical ties between Britain and America. I asked Thea what she hopes visitors can take away from a visit to Sulgrave Manor.
Well, I like to hope that visitors can take something away with them that they didn't know before. It might be something in one of our exhibits, items on show. It might be a little bit of knowledge about sayings that we have in daily usage that have a historical background. Or it might be how it all came about, how the American War of Independence came about, why it came about, and the connections that we have across the Atlantic, that we do have this connection.
Sulgrave Manor represents more than the history of a single family. It reflects the movement of people, ideas, and opportunity across the Atlantic world. It's impossible to know exactly how history might have been different if the Washington family had remained in or returned to England, but perhaps that's what makes the story of Sulgrave Manor so compelling. Within those walls is the beginning of a story that would eventually help create another nation entirely and shape the course of history. From Northamptonshire to Virginia, Sulgrave Manor remains a lasting reminder that the histories of the United Kingdom and the United States have always been deeply connected. To learn more about the America250UK project or Sulgrave Manor, visit our website at America250UK.org.